Hey everybody, I'm Mark Walters of BigFanboy.com, and I'm sitting here with Alexandre Philipe. And Alexandre is the director of The People vs. George Lucas. And if you follow the website, you're probably no stranger to that because we've been talking it up pretty big. It was one of our 10 films that we were most looking forward to seeing at South by Southwest. And I got to say, I'm really disappointed. I'm just kidding. It was phenomenal. It was everything you could want it to be in terms of both a documentary, I think, coming from someone who is a Star Wars fan. I guess I just want to talk to you a little bit about what was the impetus of making you want to get this film going and actually, make this film, and what made you decide to kind of go forward with this statement initially?
Well, I'm a fanboy at heart, and but I'm also first and foremost a documentary filmmaker. So the fanboy in me was really obviously excited about this topic, because you can't put two Star Wars fans in a room together without starting a debate, about George Lucas. I mean, the feelings are pretty strong. But as a documentary filmmaker, I'm really interested in this from a cultural perspective. And looking at this, the evolution of this. Dysfunctional relationship or dynamic between George and the fans, and it was a perfect love story in the 70s and 80s. Nothing could go wrong, and now it seems that no matter what George does, he can't do anything right, as far as the fans are concerned, and it's really sad to see. And so I really wanted to look at this objectively, as objectively as possible. Look at both sides of the story and say, how can we heal this? So that's.
Well, and there really is no other film franchise quite like Star Wars. There's no other film franchise that has, worldwide, has grabbed such a large audience and has made such a lasting impression on people.
That's right.
Now, was it sort of a conscious effort for you to make sure that while making this film, that, like you said, I think you did a really good job of showing both sides of the story, because there is always going to be the argument of, no matter how mad you get at George, he still gave us Star Wars. And so you kind of have to appreciate that side of it. But was it a conscious effort for you to make sure that you showed every possible angle of that, instead of, because obviously people may say, is this just going to be a whitewash of George Lucas as a director? And I think you did a good job of showing every angle of that.
Thanks. Well, no, to me, there would be no reason really to make a George Lucas bashing film. There's enough George Lucas bashing on the internet that who really needs a movie version of that? Right. There's no question that there is certain, a fair amount of that on the screen, because that's part of the debate. But it was always my intent to make as balanced, and objective a debate as possible, because I think that George Lucas has done a number of things that have alienated his fans. The fans have I think, very real, tangible reasons to be pissed off. And on the other hand,
Jar Jar.
Well, that would be one of them. On the other hand, I think the fans have also really gone too far, and I think it's there's a bit of a tragedy here, because I think the fans have also very much alienated George, and it's sad to see, because ultimately, we haven't received anything from him other than Star Wars in so many years, and I think that's a shame, because I think the guy is just awfully talented.
No, he is. Especially when you go back, and you did a nice job, I think, on this film of introducing the beginnings of his career, and working with Francis Ford Coppola, and some of his amazing influences going back and through the history of film. He really is a pretty amazing individual when you think about it.
Oh, absolutely.
Now, you interviewed a lot of interesting people for this, not just fans.
Yep.
You talked to people that actually worked on the Star Wars movies, people like Gary Kurtz, people like Dave Prowse. I know that Gary Kurtz has been somewhat outspoken in terms of some of his negative feelings towards Star Wars. And it seemed to me like, and maybe this is just my impression, but were you holding back on some of the stuff that he had to allow about those films? Because it seemed to me, I kept thinking, oh, here's Gary Kurtz, here we go. Here's where the good stuff comes into play, And it never really seemed like it got too scathing. So was that holding back a little bit? Or?
Well, Gary was actually, very reserved and very political, during his interview. And I'm not, I didn't try to get juicy stuff out of him for the sake of getting juicy stuff. He was certainly critical of certain aspects of, the making of Star Wars, if you will, that ultimately just weren't part of the story. We have 634 hours of footage, so we have a tremendous amount of footage. But
Which
ultimately,
will all be available on the DVD.
absolutely,
right?
Well, as much of it as possible. We definitely want to have a big sort of box set release. But ultimately, there were a lot of topics that we explored that we felt would be a part of the movie. But we decided, ultimately, the story is really about George and the fans,
sure.
And so, as a result, a lot of it had to be left out. So,
was there anyone that you talked to that you weren't able to include in the final cut that maybe, in hindsight, you were like, I really wish we could have put that little piece in there?
There were unfortunately a number of people that we interviewed that didn't make the cut. From cultural experts to to filmmakers to even fans who were just really great and entertaining. But ultimately, I mean, that's the way it goes. I thought there would be a lot more Gary Kurtz in the film because we interviewed him for 90 minutes, and we may have maybe 50 seconds of him in the film. If that. So that's just the way it goes. When you're making a film and you have a story to tell, you have to stick to the story. I mean, that's the number one thing you have to focus on.
Yeah. Now, obviously, I think the number one question that you probably get from a lot of people is, has George seen this? and I know there's really no definitive way to know if he has or not, but have you at least maybe sent a copy in his direction or attempted to?
Well, I didn't see him in the audience at the Paramount. He wasn't well, that's right, maybe, or he wasn't at the South Lamar either. But so I don't think there's any possible way he could have seen the film yet.
Right.
If George calls me tomorrow and says, come on down to the ranch, I'd like to see the film, of course I'd be very honored, But at this stage, they've basically, I've invited them to participate, they've respectfully declined, and I totally understand that. So, until they really show an interest in the film, I don't think it would be appropriate for me to, just put it in front of them. So, but, I would be more than willing not only to show him the film, but certainly be eager to ask him some of the questions that the fans have been asking for decades, for a long time, certainly without getting any sort of straight answer from him, and just have a chat. I think it'd be fascinating.
It seems to me like the response has been pretty overwhelmingly good.
Yeah.
Would you say that? I mean, is this the sort of thing that are you guys going to start doing a lot of different film festivals, or at this point are you kind of looking at, how do we get this out there into a really wide audience? I mean, what's the next step at this point?
Well, we have committed already to 4 really top tier film festivals that unfortunately I can't announce just yet because we're not allowed to yet. But our international premiere is going to be announced in the next few days, and then some really big ones also following that. We've unfortunately had to turn down about a dozen film festivals, and not because, I mean, believe me, it broke my heart. I mean, really nice venues, but we also want to make sure that our strategy in terms of distribution is something that we don't overplay the film at festivals, and so we certainly want to make sure that the film is available on the widest possible scale. We've had a lot of interest so far in terms of distribution. So right now we're kind of sticking to the big ones and debating what is going to be best for the film and to ensure that fans around the world can really get a chance to see it.
Are you going to be at Star Wars Celebration?
I don't know yet, actually.
I would love to see this play.
That would be awesome. That would be awesome. But I don't know. I mean, it's difficult to screen a film like this, not only at a celebration but also at the cons. I mean, I think it's you have to look at it as it's not a fan film. It's a documentary film, and you have to show it first and foremost on the big stages of the big international film festivals to give it the clout that I think it needs to have, because it's we worked a lot on this film.
Right. The movie is The People versus George Lucas, Alexandre Philipe, and it is showing again tomorrow night at
9:45 p.m. at the G-Tech.
At the G-Tech, which is the convention center for South by Southwest.
That's right.
Please check this film out. Also, peopleversusgeorge.com. Links on bigfanboy.com. Thanks, Alexandre. I really appreciate you talking to us.
Hey, thanks. It was a pleasure.